2 Thessalonians 2, verses 1 to 4.
The most problematic passage for pre-tribulationists is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
2 Thessalonians was written by the Apostle Paul, in part to refute a false teaching circulating at the time that the Thessalonians had missed the rapture and were in the day of the Lord. Paul's message to the Thessalonians was very simple. He told them not to worry. They had not missed the rapture, and were therefore not in the day of the Lord.
And so the way he disabuses the Thessalonians from that notion is he says certain things have to happen first. And those things were the apostasy and the revelation of the man of lawlessness, that is the Antichrist, what we would call the Antichrist.
There are two main reasons why this is a problem for the pre-tribulationists. The first is that, as we have seen, pre-tribbers maintain that there are no events that must occur before the rapture. And here Paul blatantly says there are two events that must occur first: the rebellion, sometimes translated as apostasy, and the revealing of the man of lawlessness.
If Paul had taught pre-tribulationism, his simplest answer would be, no, the rapture hasn't occurred yet. Instead of, no, there are certain things that have to happen first. And as soon as you say there are certain things that have to happen first, you've undermined pre-tribulationism. So pre-tribulationists have a very difficult time, in my opinion, making 2 Thessalonians 2 fit with their thinking.
2 Thessalonians 2 poses the greatest problem for the pre-trib position, or certainly is one of the greatest problem passages for the pre-trib position, because Paul does exactly what the majority of pre-tribbers say does not occur, and that is he gives us a list, a chronology of events specifically connected to the rapture.
We know that Paul was teaching that these two events would occur before the day of the Lord, in part because he uses the specific Greek word proton or protos, which is often translated first, and is specifically used here to describe when these two events would take place in relationship to the day of the Lord.
In the Greek is very specific. It uses the term protos, and it means before or first. So Paul here is teaching explicitly that two events have to happen before the day of the Lord.
Yeah, the fact that Paul says these things must happen first is important. He doesn't just say these things must happen, but these must happen first.
The second problem for pre-tribulationists is that at least one of the precursors mentioned here, the revealing of the man of lawlessness, is an event that takes place at the midpoint of the 7-year period.
And most significantly, this revealing of the man of lawlessness, which Paul describes in saying he will set himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God, which places the revealing of the Antichrist at the midpoint. So the coming of our Lord and our being gathered to him cannot occur until after the midpoint of the 70th week.
Another popular way that pre-tribulationists try to deal with 2 Thessalonians 2 relates to the word rebellion, sometimes translated as falling away or apostasy in verse 3. It is one of the two things that are supposed to happen before the day of the Lord. This is usually understood to mean a falling away from the faith, that is, Christians apostatizing or leaving the faith of Christianity. Recently, some pre-tribulationists have put forward the idea that the word behind this word rebellion, apostasia in the Greek, means the rapture. The idea is that Paul was teaching that the rapture would happen first, and then the man of lawlessness would be revealed. This is usually done to preserve the all-important pre-trib doctrine of imminence, that no events can come before the rapture.
But in 2 Thessalonians, they come to this text, they got real problem, they know it's difficult, they know it poses a great problem for their position, and so what do? They take a word, apostasy, say, aha, this word is referring to the rapture, the falling away, the taking away of the believers on the earth.
This interpretation has two serious problems. The first is the complete lack of any evidence that the word apostasia can mean the rapture. And the second is that such an interpretation would mean that Paul is making a nonsensical and utterly useless point in this passage. Pre-tribulationists claim that the apostasia can mean the rapture because the word is sometimes translated in early English Bibles like the Tyndale and Geneva Bibles as the English word depart. They would say that if the word can mean depart in English, it might also be a reference to the rapture, where believers will depart the earth. The problem is that the word is never used that way. When the early English Bibles used the English word depart to define apostasia, they meant it to be understood in a non-spatial sense, as in, he departed from the faith, or he departed from sound doctrine. The word is never used to describe physical departure as in, he departed from his house, or as in our case, he departed from the earth.
It always means a non-physical departure, such as, for example, a political rebellion or an apostasy from the faith.
The word is used 5 other times in the Bible, and each time it's used in a political or religious sense, never in a physical sense. Even if you expanded your search to include all of the secular writings in Koine Greek, you wouldn't find the word used in a spatial or physical sense.
Show me a historical reference where this word is used that way. Any writing, any historical writings, 200 years before the New Testament, 200 years after the New Testament.
The second reason this argument makes no sense is that if the word apostasia means the rapture, then Paul's argument to the Thessalonians is essentially that the rapture can't happen until the rapture happens.
The fatal problem with this is Paul says that these things happen before the coming of our Lord and our being gathered to him, which is the rapture. And so it is illogical to say that the rapture must occur before the rapture occurs.
What it's doing is it's making Paul say that, well, the rapture can't come before the rapture.
To their credit, this apostasia is the same thing as the rapture theory is openly rejected by the vast majority of pre-trib scholars.
Even their own scholars, such as Paul Feinberg and John Walvoord, 2 of the most esteemed pre-tribulational scholars, have completely rejected this interpretation.
They haven't even convinced all pre-tribulationists of this, who argue that the apostasy, in Greek, he apostasia, means the rapture. By that, Paul means the rapture. That's a very difficult case to make, if not an impossible case to make.